Stoddard, Wisconsin is about 10 minutes outside of La Crosse. La Crosse is about an hour, 15-minute drive down I-90 from Rochester. The senator came here today because it is a family farm. She is speaking about agriculture issues and very much campaigning for the Biden-Harris ticket. Even though she is no longer in the race, we were able to talk about the debate. Did it sting a little bit for her to be sitting at home watching the debate, and her thoughts on where things are going right now in the final weeks leading into the presidential election? Senator, I really want to start with how your husband's doing.
Oh, sure. You know, he is doing really well. It was hard for him at the beginning. He got really sick. He had pneumonia. He was in the hospital for nearly a week, and then had to isolate for 2 weeks after that, because back then we didn't know what you should do. And he's doing really well now. And so is my dad, who got it at 92, and he was in assisted living, and it was really, that was scary too, but he made it through.
I had not heard that.
Yeah.
So how long ago was that?
That was back in June.
Okay, but he's doing
No,
okay.
he's doing really well, yes.
Well, that's good to hear. Talk about today's event and why Stoddard, Wisconsin?
Well, I love ag. I love rural areas, and Tammy and Baldwin and I are friends, and we wanted to come out here to make the case to rural America that this Trump administration, despite a lot of talk, there's been a lot of problems. And you start with the pandemic, where the economy is fits and starts and things open and close, and we'd be much better off with a really set testing plan for the whole country so that people could go back to work on a more consistent basis. And then the second thing is that there have been all kinds of problems with the trade war and how they've affected our farmers. And Joe Biden has a lot of experience in international issues and negotiations, and I think that would be really good as well.
Let's go into that. I really have been looking at some of the issues and people who oppose what the president has done with trade with China, the tariffs and whatnot. What is the stark contrast between what Joe Biden would do as president and what President Trump has done?
Well, I think, first of all, it's been so volatile with President Trump, not just his personality or how he handled the debate, but trade as well. And what that means is that he suddenly will put or make tweets or something saying, we're gonna do these tariffs all over, and then no one knows how to react to that, and then you've got this really broad tariff situation, which makes it hard to sell American goods to certain countries. I think what you need are targeted tariffs for certain incidents, like in Minnesota, at the end of the Obama administration, they started going after China in a good way for steel dumping. And it worked. We opened up the iron ore mines again, and it worked. Instead of these broad tariffs that have really affected a lot of the exports for farmers. And so I just think you need fair trade agreements. And we made some improvements to the USMCA as originally negotiated. That's a trade agreement with Canada and Mexico that the administration worked on, but it was the Democrats that pushed for some changes, and then that got passed. And that is a model we can use as we deal with Europe and Asia and other trade agreements that may be coming our way. Because in this really tough economy right now because of pandemic, you want to be able to export your goods to the world. And that means an emphasis on American-made products and American-made food.
People who criticize the president being as tough as he was before the pandemic, as the trade issues really started to ramp up with China, say he was too tough on them. China was going to retaliate. Other people on the other side then say it was time to get tough on China.
Sure.
Do you agree?
The Chinese have a long-term view, their leadership, and they are looking at everything our president says. So yes, they have not been good players at all. They have stolen intellectual property, the Chinese. They have violated trade agreement, and then they have basically not in their own country done things to have good labor standards and the like. So that's affected us and hurt us. But the answer is not to just slap on broad tariffs on everything. The answer is to engage in negotiations that actually produce agreements that make it better. And we just haven't seen that happen. In fact, our world trade deficit with the rest of the world, the U.S. trade deficit, has gotten worse during the Trump administration. It's now at something like $891 billion, I think.
For critics of Joe Biden, they say he was in office for 47 years and things didn't change, things didn't get better, things weren't better for our farmers. What do you say to them?
Well, I take us back to the Freedom to Farm era, which was a Republican-led policy. And in fact, during the Obama-Biden administration and under the great leadership of Tom Vilsack, who was the Ag Secretary from Iowa, former governor of Iowa, the entire time, we actually had very steady ag policy, and we saw so much growth with everything from commodities on. And this last farm bill, the Democrats played a major role in negotiating. So I view the time when Obama and Biden were in as a better time for our farmers than right now. And in fact, the downturn in farming and in commodity prices happened before the pandemic because of the trade war. And so I think the case can be made that Joe Biden, as vice president to President Obama, working with Ag Secretary Vilsack, they actually did a better job, much better job, than what we've seen in the last 4 years.
As you're hearing from farmers now and being here today and looking at the ag issues as we are dealing with in this pandemic, it's hard for farmers. It was before the pandemic, especially family farms. Corporate farms were hurting them very, very much. So when the government comes in on farming issues, farmers, family farms, hold their breath thinking, oh God, what's coming?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And so that's why I think you want steady leadership. And one other issue I would add, which is really important in southern Minnesota, are the biofuel plants and the fact that we've seen so many idled or closed or having trouble. And that in part was the waivers the Trump administration gave to oil companies. The Trump administration's volatility, again, the president's personality is kind of seeped into, or in a big way has, our policies in rural America, and I think it's time for a change.
Can I switch gears real quick and talk about the vice presidential debate this week? Get your thoughts on it, and before you even tell me your thoughts on it, did it sting at all watching that, thinking, I should be sitting in that seat?
No, I am a big fan of Kamala's, and as I said, when she got chosen, she's going to be a great vice president. And I was proud to endorse Joe Biden and proud of the campaign we ran. And so many of my ideas they are putting forward on infrastructure, on rural America, and the like. And I thought she did a great job in the debate. It's not easy. Mike Pence is a good debater. I actually was in the front row of the debate he had with Tim Kaine in 2016. Yet Kamala was able to have the facts on her side and bring those facts, particularly when it came to the pandemic. It is very hard for Mike Pence, even if he's a good debater, to explain why this president didn't do more at the beginning of the pandemic to get testing out, to be more honest with the American people, and certainly put in place better rules when it came to masks. And he does the opposite. You know, he walks out of the hospital and walks up the steps of the White House and defiantly takes off his mask. That's a moment no one's going to forget.
What a stark contrast, though, this week than what the debate was last week.
Exactly.
And last week was hard.
I will add that as well. I think Trump, he interrupted Chris Wallace 145 times, an all-time record. And so...
Did you have a hard time watching that? Or were you sitting there?
That was really hard to watch. It was much easier to watch the vice presidential debate, but the Trump debate, I thought, really showed people what he was like.
So,
and that's one of the purposes of a debate, no matter how hard it was to watch. And a lot of independent voters, especially suburban voters, they kind of saw that and thought, wait a minute, I don't want 4 more years of this.
And that's what I was wondering, because as I'm watching it, I don't like watching that kind of conflict. I have a hard time. And other people love to watch that. So on one hand, it was entertaining. Did you ever, in that debate, think, this is really good for Democrats?
Yeah, you know, right now it is so hard, having had this personal experience of my husband and my dad having coronavirus. It's just hard to watch all this for anyone, and I just want to have some peace. I want to be able to wake up in the morning without seeing a mean tweet. For Rochester, where it is such the center of medical research, I want that research, of course, respected and built on. And I just think to do that, we're going to need a new administration.
Can you speak to the medical side of things in Rochester with Mayo Clinic, the plasma testing, which your husband benefited from?
Well, actually, my husband...
And he donates.
Yeah, my husband is, I think, on his 4th time donating. He was just down a few weeks ago. And we know it's not the only solution, but we know it's part of the solutions. But the key, again, that got all messed up a bit for a few days, now it's okay, because of the president's exaggeration of it. And, you know, these things make it really hard for people to understand where they should turn. And I think you've got to allow the doctors to make recommendations. Plasma is helpful. We're learning more and more. Some of the new things the president got to have, they're helpful. But to say that this was going to be gone by Easter or that it would be evaporate in the warm weather, wow, that is misleading the public. And for me to find out that he knew way back in February this was airborne at a time where we were just trying to keep our surfaces clean, which is still important, and wash our hands. And my husband didn't know you could walk in a restaurant without a mask and get it back in February and March. The president had more information and he didn't tell people.
The next few weeks for you will be what? This?
Next few weeks, yeah, I'll be at dairy farms.
Next few weeks will follow you.
Week. No, I'm going to continue to help out Joe Biden. I'm going to help out some of our candidates in Minnesota, including Dan Feehan in the Rochester area, and then I'm going to in all of southern Minnesota. And then I've got work to do. I've got this hearing coming up next week, so I'll be back in Washington. But I think really important is the closing argument to make to people, which is Joe Biden has a plan to build back better. He is someone who is compassionate and competent. And even if you voted for Donald Trump before, and even if you have long time voted Republican, after what you saw in the debate, after you saw how the president handled getting sick, where he took off his mask in front of the entire world, you've got to think, I want something different for the next 4 years, and I want to bring our country together instead of dividing it.